Welcome everybody. Welcome to this Helix webinar. My name is Mike Rosenstrike and I'm the chair of Helix. And with me this morning is Dr. Kylie Prendergast, our Managing Director. Welcome, Kylie.
Thank you.
Just turning to the agenda. What Kylie and I would like to do today is to provide a little bit more colour around the capital raising, which is currently in progress, as well as to provide some deeper insights on the exploration activities which are underway. And these are at a very exciting phase. We've got a series of high conviction copper targets near existing mineral resource and drilling planned to start in a few weeks. Let's turn to the rights issue that we have in progress at the moment. I think we're all aware of the key terms, which I've summarised here again. And the key message, which is aimed at those picking this presentation up on the ASX platform, is the timetable. The rights trading has finished on Tuesday, so now everyone is set and the subscription period closes at 5 o'clock on Tuesday next week on the 14th of May. So for those of you who are intending to take up your rights, make subscription applications, please be aware of that timetable. We've had quite a lot of questions through our investor hub on mechanical issues, or perhaps people haven't received paperwork. And I think, thank you very much to our company secretary and Karina. I think they've been helping a lot of people get their individual forms and making sure that those people that want to participate that haven't had forms for whatever reason are being well served. I'd just like to reflect a little bit on the rationale of the capital raising structure. And slide please, Kylie. And what it's all about is it's about making this attractive to existing shareholders, giving them priority, and that explains the pricing and the structure. But it's also supported with a $1.5 million underwriting. And I need to acknowledge the support of Mahe Capital to achieve that. And that underwriting, and hopefully with the support of our shareholders, means that we can go drilling in a few weeks' time. At this point, with the rights issue in progress, I think it's fair to say that we're pleased with how the rights trading performed, and it demonstrates obvious interest from new investors to get into the Helix copper story. It's interesting, Helix has been around for something like 45 years. It's a long time for a listed company. We have something like 3,500 shareholders. Half of those have less than marketable parcels. So we are doing our very best to incentivise the whole range of shareholders and interest them in getting aboard what we've been calling the Copper Powerball. Now, to tell us why an investment in Helix could be a Powerball moment, I'll hand over to Kylie to provide an update on our recent exploration. Take it away, please, Kylie.
Thank you, Mike. And look, I'm absolutely delighted to be here today to be able to talk about the Cobar copper and gold hunt that Helix is in the process of undertaking and has been undertaking for some time now. And I mean, this comes at a time when copper and gold are very much in the market. Just the picture on the left there shows a piece of drill core that came from our Camballigo deposit. So this would have been drilled sort of over the last year or so. And we have a very active exploration team in Cobar. Just a short acknowledgement for the traditional owners of the country where we work. And also we certainly recognise their continuing connection to lands and pay our respects. So this is the Helix team. Our share price sort of wanders between 0.3 and 0.4 of a cent, as Mike mentioned. We have a lot of shareholders and the shares on issue are just over 2 billion. On the 31st of March, our cash was 1.68. As I mentioned, we are very, very focused on copper in Cobar. So as a Helix shareholder or as a new Helix shareholder, you are certainly leveraged to new copper and gold discoveries in this region. And I'll talk a little bit about the region. But first, I just wanted to touch on the copper opportunity. Probably a lot of you are aware there's a lot of news at the moment all around copper. And I thought that this chart from Sprott actually provided a really neat summary of why copper is such an essential metal just to our way of life, and that it's something that's not going to go away. So this is, I'll put the link on there. It's called The Copper Opportunity by Sprott, and that is what we're doing. As mentioned, we are focused in Cobar. So there's a little map up the top. It shows that we're about 500 kilometres in from Sydney. Hold on, I'm just letting some more people in from Sydney. We have a large land position, and what's important about it, it is right in the middle of the district, and we are surrounded by old mines, we're surrounded by current mines, and around us there are 6 operating processing plants. So I believe this gives us sort of real opportunity to monetize or process anything that we can find on our ground. I'll point out that the Aeris-Triton operations are just directly north of us, Mineral Hills directly south of our eastern tenements. And then we also hold a western tenement, which is a stone's throw from Cobar, and probably the largest operation in the region, which is the CSA copper mine. So because this is a proven and sort of a long operating region, there's plenty of infrastructure and plenty of people with experience in mining and exploration. Now, where are we going to find it? Well, we can look at what's been found before, and certainly this is the Cobar trend, they call it, or the big Cobar fault. And this has a whole bunch of things along it. Aurelia's here, metals acquisition here, and there was a giant lead zinc silver mine called Endeavour. We're particularly interested in the CSA mine because it's a copper mine. And our ground sits a little bit to the east of this big structure, and we have big faults as well. And we have been able to show that we have got copper deposits on our faults that look very similar to the CSA copper mine. So this is the CSA deposit. So I've just put a little bit of information on there because as geologists, we're really interested in what this thing looks like. So then when we go out to the field, we can be looking for some of the same things. So this is the largest operation in the region. It was bought by Metals Acquisition Limited from Glencore for over $1 billion US a couple of years ago, very recently listed on the ASX. And this has been a very long producer, very profitable producer. It produces copper at a high grade. So the current mineral resources are around 5% copper. But what's really interesting is the shape of this thing. So it's basically like a big pipe, and there's these lenses or loads of copper that travel down all the way 2 kilometres below the ground. Okay, so it's only got a small footprint at surface, and then these loads that travel down to great depths. Now, I just wanted to share with you, basically, this is our strategy for the year. So we've gone through our portfolio projects. Obviously, we're just building on previous work. We've done a lot of work sort of building up a pipeline of target. We've collected lots of data over our licenses. And what we've narrowed it down to is about 10 really high priority projects that we want to work on this year. And the reason we pulled these out is because these are things that we believe we can drill on this year. And they're things that have compelling grades and compelling geological stories. We do have a couple of projects that we put in the discovery category. This is Bijou and a project that's called CZ on the eastern side. And many of you are aware we do have one copper resource, which is called the Camballigo copper resource. So this year, Helix is going to focus on growing our copper resource through new discoveries. I'm going to show you what we're doing to try and achieve that. And then the second component of our focus is really advancing and testing these good quality priority targets we have. Right, how are we going to do this? How are we going to grow this resource? Well, on the Western Tenement, we've decided we're looking for CSA copper deposits. Everyone who's looked at Camballigo says, gee, this thing looks like CSA. We've got one copper resource there. And what we've decided is to just really focus our efforts in on a copper camp or an area where there's just a bunch of copper at surface. And that's a 10-kilometre zone of the Rochford Trent here. And many of you familiar with the Helix story would have heard us talking about these areas again and again, and it's because they're so interesting. Now, we have deployed IP Geophysics early in the year. We want to test a new tool to see if it's, I guess, faster at finding this copper mineralisation. Right, here we are, zooming in on this 10-kilometre area. Really nice geochemical footprints at Cambalego, Caballero and Bijou. Now, this is the outcome from the geophysics strategy. We've been doing this IP electrical geophysics. Basically, what it does is it puts electricity into the ground, and if there's something sparkly in there, like some sulfides, it just lights it up and it electrifies it, and then we measure it. And that's exactly what happened. So we did these southern lines over the top of our Cambalego resource, and we got a beautiful little light bulb anomaly down here that said there is sulfides here. We also pulled up another couple of anomalies. There was one in the middle, just near our west lodes, and then we pulled up an anomaly over here on the western side. The west lodes sitting in the middle, there's good copper in them. They've got good grades, but they're a little bit skinny. So they haven't made it into our resource, but there is a couple of geophysical features underneath. So maybe there's a little bit more to them at depth. However, the real eye-opener was this western anomaly. It's 625 metres long, and it sits underneath the copper geochemistry anomaly. So there's copper at surface above it, and then we've got one of these big red blobs underneath. Ultimately, we need to drill it, and that is exactly what we're planning to do. We hopefully have a drill rig heading out in the next couple of weeks. We're planning to drill these 3 holes along this long anomaly and into the really strong part of the electrical chargeable response. And we're going to see what it is. And we're obviously extremely hopeful that it represents another copper lode. As I mentioned, at CSA, there's lots of copper lodes. So we would really like our Cambalego project to have more than one copper lode. I have put in a few drill highlights from the Cambalego drilling. As you can see, we get really nice grades, 3-4% copper when you drill through these massive sulfide copper zones. Just want to share one more picture comparing sort of CSA and Cambalego. I'm not doing anything new here. The guys at Aurelia have done this kind of story before, and it's because these things are really similar. Okay, the geology, the mineralisation, the alteration, everything tells us that Cambalego is very similar to CSA. So if it's got the same sort of characteristics, you know, why can't it be bigger? And we've got these 2 undrilled IP anomalies that we will test. And if they're copper lodes, then we're going to be doing really well. But the other message here is that these things go down. Okay, so at CSA goes down to 2 kilometres deep. There is no reason why there isn't more mineralisation at depth underneath Cambalego. So we've demonstrated we've got a copper lode at Cambalego, but where are we going to find the rest of it? So I'd like to draw your attention to the copper footprints at Caballero and Bijou. So these are very nice surface copper anomalies. They're each about 2 kilometres long, which is a really good size, maybe about 1.5 kilometres wide. And we have a little bit of drilling at both projects, and we have hit copper sulfides in both of those areas. So what we need to know is whether IP geophysics will also be a useful tool to test for copper lodes at these 2 other copper anomalies. So it's a little bit of a tricky diagram, so I'm just going to keep it really simple. Basically, I just want to share with you that there are undrilled areas at Caballero. Okay, and this is the areas that I think we should be targeting with the geophysics. So far, we've only done one line. The results are still pending. We've decided to just slow it down a little bit because we really want to understand what's going on at Camballigo. And then I think we need to come back down to these projects and push them a bit harder. Just a quick refresh on Bijou. I mean, Bijou is a big untested copper footprint. You know, the majority of this anomaly has no drilling on it. So we only really discovered this anomaly at this scale in late November last year. Then we trundled out and drilled it pretty quickly soon after, and we got the results back in January. We only tested a very small portion of this anomaly. And we, sorry, my room's being invaded. We just tested a really small portion of this anomaly, and we did get high-grade sulfides, and we wanted to go back and sort of have a think about it and work out where to come next. So we have done a bit of geophysics here, and we will come back with more. Now, moving over to the eastern side, we have another license. It's called imaginatively called our Eastern Tenement. This license is really interesting. So it's directly south of the Eris operations. You can see the Triton copper mine just to the north. And there's a whole bunch of other copper projects through here that Eris have been operating. So the Eris ground has an endowment of about 650,000 tonnes of copper, and our licenses are prospective for copper. So what we did is we rolled out these big auger programs. You can see this sort of red shape through here. That's where we've been sending out the auger rig across the wheat fields. And we've gone to areas that have never had samples before, and we're the first ones to take geochemical samples. And I mean, this is a piece of ground that is directly south of operating copper mines. So it's pretty exciting. We have managed to pull up a couple of copper targets, but what we did not expect was to find a gold zone, a brand new gold zone that our reconnaissance auger programs discovered only in March this year. Going to talk about it on the next slide. The other area I wanted to point out to you, because we will probably start talking about it a bit more, is this little license. It's called Muriel Tank up on the top left, and there is a historical gold field there that operated in the 1900s, and we've just been out there and started doing a bit more work as well. Now, this is our new gold zone. Okay, so when we got the auger results back, there's a really nice low-level arsenic and antimony anomaly, and it is 11 kilometres long. So it's got some serious scale to it. Arsenic and antimony are very good pathfinders for gold. And then when we got the gold numbers back, we've pulled out 3 sort of really coherent anomalies. So these anomalies have got some real continuity. This is just a regional program, so very big spacing on the samples. Our next job is to come back in and infill these gold anomalies. I will point out that the anomalies are open to the north. They're also open down to the south, so we haven't actually closed this thing off yet. And we know we've got gold because at Aldebaran, we've got some rock chips recently reported, so up to almost 9 grams of gold, another one at 1.5 grams, little tiny bit of copper in them as well. And there is a drill hole at Maxis Folly, an old drill hole that tested some old mine workings. So somebody's been here previously and tried to mine back in the olden days. You can't see this mine anymore because it's all ploughed wheat fields. So, yeah, we're going to come back here and do some more auger sampling, and we will start trying to find drill targets. So that's the plan for Helix. And look, I think there's a lot of good news coming ahead. We're very much focused on that copper program, sort of trying to see what else we can find around our Camballigo resource. And then the second aspect is sort of pushing through those top priority targets. You will hear a little bit more news about the geophysics. I put some out yesterday talking about that Camballigo IP target. we will be drilling that as soon as we can get the drill rig to site. We're starting the infill auger on that gold zone on the eastern tenement. And then the programs will just follow on. So as we get results, we'll follow up and we will work to develop new drill targets. So look, Helix is a great little company. We've got a very committed, hardworking team, got a bit of funding at the moment. We've got a whole bunch of very good copper and gold targets right in an area where, you know, it's got a lovely history of copper and gold production and mining and exploration. So real ASX leverage to copper and gold. Thank you.
Well done, Kylie. Thank you very much. And I assume that room invasion was housekeeping at the YMC shelter that you're staying at in Sydney, attending the Resources Roundup. So
yes.
Tell the backpackers to just keep quiet for 15 more minutes while we go through some Q&A. We have got a few questions and I'll run through them now. Excuse me. So the first one, it says, let me just get on top of it. It says, well done on those new targets. This is for you, Kylie, this question. It says, well done on these new targets. They look very prospective. You mentioned that you have done IP over the other copper anomalies. What results did you see there?
All right, so we did start IP programs at Bijou and Caballero. At this stage, only a line or so on each. So I think what needs to happen is we need to do a full coverage program over those prospective areas. And you've got to be a bit open-minded about where those copper lodes might be. They may not be along strike. They can be at depth, so they can be blind. So look, we're still reviewing those results, but ultimately we do need to confirm this technique is effective. So once we turned up that big anomaly at Cambalego, we decided it was really important to prioritise testing that target and making sure it's copper. Okay,
thank you. I have another question here. I think this one's, I'll take this one. It's from Phil. Phil says, I'm disappointed by the capital raising at such a large discount, 40 to 50%, exclamation mark. And when you still had $1.6 million of cash. That's not counting the 1 for 2 option with another lowball exercise price of 6 cents. Please explain, exclamation mark. Okay, look, there's a few issues to unpack here. I'll take that on. I think I've been at pains to point out that this offer is targeted at you, the current shareholders, which I assume includes Phil, so that they can participate and avoid dilution, which would have been the outcome had we gone for a placement to outsiders or sophisticated investors through a standard sort of broking firm. So if you do take up your entitlement, you maintain your relative interest and you as an existing shareholder will benefit from that sharp pricing. So I think that kind of deals with the discount aspect. The reality is, yes, we do have 1.67 million at bank at the end of March, but drilling and geophysics are expensive. And the board's view was that with the uncertainty in equity markets, that it would be prudent to not allow our cash to get too low, say less than $1 million. And when it gets to those levels, everybody can see that you come issue anyway, and the price drifts on. So I'd point out that, you know, to the credit of Kylie, Gordon and our team, our cash spend on exploration is something like 80% of our expenditures. So I think we get that exploration corporate balance right. So it's been a cautious approach to treasury, but very efficient in terms of focusing that capital into the ground. And in regards to the point that's raised on the option, again, you know, that's for the benefit of our existing shareholders. And the upside for them is that they're able to trade those options because we plan for them to be quoted on the ASX, or they can hold them and hopefully be in a position to exercise at well in the money positions, fingers crossed. And if those options are exercised, they go into the money, Kylie does some great drilling, then they bring another $2.3 million into the company. So they're actually part of the capital acquisition as well. I'm not seeking to change your mind, Phil, but I have shared that from the company's perspective and our motivation. So I hope that addresses that point. Now, I have another question here, Kylie. This one's for you. You are focusing on just one part of the Rochford Trend. What about the other parts of the Western Licence? Over to you.
Yeah. Yes, we haven't talked that much about it. We do talk a lot about the Rochford Trend. We have pulled up a new target called Lewis, which is on something called the Lewis Trend, which does look very interesting, and we will be that's made it into our priority list. So we're going to start moving a little bit further west. But to be honest, like those copper anomalies in that 10-kilometre area of the Rochford Trend we're focusing on are really good anomalies. There's 3 of them. They're lined up on a structure. We demonstrated there's copper sulfide in all of them. So this is probably the best place to really try and find some more copper resources. We have a lot of prospective ground. There's 3,000 kilometres. There's a lot of other targets. And, we have ranked those targets. And this calendar year, we have decided to really focus on pushing those 10 priority targets and seeing if we can make a discovery out of them. 3 of those are the ones on that Rochford Trend.
Okay, I mean, it'd be great to increase the resources near an existing resource. So
exactly.
Looking forward to that drilling. Okay, look, I think we've got time for another couple of questions. There's one here which I think is I'll handle. It's one that comes up frequently. When is the company going to do a capital reconstruction? There is going to be 3 billion shares on issue by mid-May, and I think that 3 billion is obviously post the rights issue and it closing successfully. Look, I'll answer that and say that there is no share consolidation currently planned. I think the reality is that discoveries drive value, and playing with the capital structure now would destroy value. Capital consolidation is really a housekeeping issue, and which we plan to address in time. I think that deals with that question. And we'll make this the last one. And this one, it says, with the nickel price at such low levels, what is Helix doing with Ionic? For those that may not be aware, Ionic is a 100% subsidiary of Helix, which houses the company's, what I regard as quite significant nickel cobalt assets, which include resources, options over resources, and some high-grade drill indicated targets. The mineralisation style is laterite, so it's shallow, but it has sort of processing challenges that go with it, but also a wonderful opportunity. These laterite deposits offer the opportunity of great big long mine lives with really serious, meaningful annual production rates once you get over that sort of capex hurdle. Look, with respect to the question, what are we going to do with Ionic? I agree with the inference of the question that there is a gloomy era around nickel. I think the speed of the Indonesian nickel production ramp up has surprised. And ironically, it does say something about the veracity of the HPAL process plants. But on the other hand, that supply of nickel has caused the nickel price to pull back something like 30% over the last 18 months. I would point out, though, that the price of nickel at the moment is around $19,000, $20,000 a tonne, so it's up something like nearly 20% on the start of the year. And we are seeing sort of forecasting that's saying in 4 or 5 years' time, we should see the nickel supply come back into balance and possibly deficit. So the assets have value and have meaning for the company. However, the reality is that the market uncertainty is such that an IPO in the near term is unlikely, and we're not going to push that. We're not spending any material money on Ionic whatsoever, and we are looking at some alternative funding deals with groups that are really focused on nickel and taking a longer term view on a nickel opportunity than the current equity market is. So I think that deals with that. Look, we've had great participation in the webinar, and I thank you all for attending. Kylie, thank you very much for your presentation. We're really looking forward to seeing those drill results come out. And I'd like to point out to everybody that we have this Investor Hub on our website. It has a lot of questions and, it has a frequently asked questions section in regards to the entitlement offer that's in progress. So if there's any doubts on timing or structure and things like that, please go to our Investor Hub linked through to our website and learn more about the company. We also have a Q&A section on that as well. And we've had a few questions starting to roll in and would really like to spark a conversation on the Helix Investor Hub about questions or concerns that you may have about your company. So please feel free to get involved in that conversation. Again, thank you very much for your interest, and look forward to providing updates on our drill program and the rights issue over the next few weeks. I'll leave it there. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.